Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we've got a really interesting set of sources, not about the usual stuff, but something maybe even more fundamental, the sound of rock and roll itself.
That's right. We're looking at guitar effects pedals.
Specifically, how one giant in the effects world, Electro Harmonix, decided to, well, tip its hat to a classic circuit from a competitor.
Yep. We are zeroing in on the Electro Harmonix Flatiron Fuzz. And for you listening, this isn't just, another stomp box. It's EHX looking directly at the Proco RA.
The RAT, yeah, absolute legend.
Absolutely. The king of that tight, mid-heavy distortion saying, okay, we're going to do our version.
So our mission today really is to unpack these sources, figure out the thinking behind it, the tech, why they called it a fuzz hybrid, and maybe most importantly, why did EHX need this?
Right. I mean, they're the big muff company, right? Huge scooped fuzz.
Yeah.
This is different.
Totally different sonic territory. Why go there?
Well, the key starting point, the fact that jumps right out, is that EHX, when they released this in late 2018, they were upfront about it. This is our take on the RAT.
No coyness there.
None. And that's a big deal because the RAT is, it's right up there with the muff in terms of iconic status, but it sounds completely different. It occupies a different space in the mix.
And the name, Flatiron Fuzz, that's pretty clever too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It grounds this tribute back in their own story.
Exactly. It's named after the Flatiron district in New York City where EHX headquarters is.
Right near the famous building.
Yep. So they're essentially saying, look, we respect this classic circuit, but we built our version right here with our own EHX identity baked in.
Okay, so let's unpack that. If it's a tribute, not just a straight clone, what's actually under the hood?
Right.
What did EHX change and tweak?
Well, they definitely started with the core R8 design. The foundation is absolutely the R8 topology, which means critically it's op-amp-driven distortion.
Op-amp. Okay, so not transistors like, say, a fuzz face or even most muffs.
Exactly. And that's a huge difference sonically. Most classic fuzzes use transistors, which often gives you that wilder, sometimes looser, more saturated sound, often with that scooped mid-range EHX is famous for.
Right.
The op-amp, though, it gives you a gain structure that's generally smoother, tighter, especially in the low end, and it naturally pushes those mids forward. It's just inherently more, controlled, even when it gets aggressive.
So that op-amp is key to keeping things tight, even at high gain. Makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the actual clipping? That's where the grit comes from, right?
That's the other crucial part. They used symmetrical clipping diodes. That specific choice is what really gives it that compressed, gritty character that screams, or rat.
Symmetrical, meaning it clips the top and bottom of the sound wave equally.
Precisely. You get this heavy, uniform compression. It smooths things out, but also adds that harmonic richness and sustain, and really helps it cut through a mix. It's that classic aggressive punch.
So it's the op-amp for the structure and tightness, and the symmetrical clipping for that specific RAT-like grit. That combo explains the hybrid feel, maybe? Mm-hmm. Bridging distortion and fuzz.
I think so, yeah. And they packed all of this into their standard nano-sized enclosure, which is also a really big deal.
Because the original RATs were kind of huge.
Yeah, famously big and clunky boxes, some of them. Putting this sound into a tiny pedalboard-friendly format was a smart move. Made it instantly appealing for, musicians gigging today.
Okay, let's talk controls. Simple layout. Volume, drive, and then there's the filter knob. This one seems to trip people up.
Oh, yeah. It's totally counterintuitive if you're used to normal tone knobs, but it is faithful to the original RAT circuit. It's a low-pass filter, meaning it cuts high frequencies.
Right. So on most pedals, clockwise means brighter.
Here, it's the opposite. Turning the filter knob clockwise makes the sound darker, smoother, cutting out the treble.
So if you want that aggressive, biting R8 sound, you actually turn the filter left.
All the way counterclockwise, yeah. That opens the filter right up, lets all the highs through, gives you that real cutting edge, that ice pick thing people talk about with R8s.
And clockwise makes it darker, smoother, maybe more vintage sounding?
Exactly. Roll it clockwise, and it tames the fizz, makes it sit back in the mix a bit more. You really have to understand that reversed operation to get the most out of the pedal.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. We've got the op-amp core, the symmetrical clipping, that kind of weird filter knob.
Yeah.
How does this all translate across the range of the drive control? You hear hybrid thrown around a lot. What does that actually sound like?
Well, the sources we looked at really highlight its versatility. If you keep the drive knob set low, you actually get tones that are much more like a crunchy overdrive. It's surprisingly articulate, dynamic, cleans up nicely with your guitar's volume knob. It's not really fuzzy at all down there.
Okay, so usable crunch,
Yeah.
Then what happens when you start turning up the drive?
Then you get into that classic R-Ray territory. Mid-drive settings give you that really gritty, aggressive distortion, lots of mid-punch, cuts through really well. Think grunge, alternative rock, punk, that kind of sound.
That core RAT sound. But the name is Flatiron Fuzz. So where does the fuzz come in?
That's when you really crank the drive knob, push it towards maximum. At those higher settings, you're pushing the op amp way beyond its clean range, driving the whole circuit into heavy saturation. The compression becomes really intense, the signal gets thick, and it takes on characteristics that feel much more like fuzz.
Oh, okay. So sustain harmonics.
Loads of sustain, yeah. Rich harmonics. It gets really big and smooth, almost like a muff in terms of sheer size and sustain, but it still retains some of that op-amp tightness and focus. It doesn't get quite as scooped or loose as a typical muff.
So the hybrid label isn't just marketing speak. It actually covers ground from overdrive through classic distortion into fuzz territory, depending on the drive setting.
Exactly. It earns that description through its range, and that filter knob interacts with the drive level dramatically.
Oh, so?
Well, imagine cranking the drive way up, getting that fuzzy saturation.
Yeah.
Now, if you turn the filter clockwise, cutting the highs, you get this massive, dark, almost sludgy, warm sound. Really heavy. But if you keep the drive cranked and turn the filter counterclockwise, letting all the highs through,
You get that searing lead tone.
exactly. Piercing, cutting, modern-sounding lead tone that will slice through absolutely anything. The tonal extremes are really quite vast when you play with the drive and filter together.
And what's really cool is seeing how this pedal gets used beyond just standard guitar stuff. The sources mention bass players, synth players.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. For guitar, it's a natural fit for, alternative punk, grunge, classic rock, even some metal. But bass players seem to really dig it, too.
Why bass specifically? Fuzz on bass can sometimes lose the low end, can't it?
It often can, especially with traditional transistor fuzzes. They can sound thin or fizzy on bass, but because the Flatiron uses that op-amp structure...
It holds on to the low frequencies better.
Right. It tends to keep more of the fundamental low end intact, so you get this really thick, aggressive, distorted bass tone that still sounds huge and powerful.
Makes sense.
Though the sources do often mention that blending in a little bit of the clean bass signal can help retain maximum clarity, so using it with a blend pedal is pretty common for bassists.
And synths. What's the appeal there? Adding grit to clean digital sounds.
Pretty much, yeah. Synthesizers, especially digital ones, can sometimes sound a bit sterile or too clean. Running them through something like the Flatiron adds that analog warmth, that grit, that harmonic complexity.
So dirtying up lead lines, bass lines.
Exactly. Gives them character, helps them sit in a mix differently. It's basically giving synth players access to that classic RIT-style distortion texture. It really expands the sonic palette.
Okay, we've got a good handle on the sound and how it's used. Let's pivot a bit to the strategy. Why did Electro Harmonix need to make this pedal in 2018? What did it mean for them as a company? They were already the kings of fuzz.
Well, it seems like a really calculated move, actually. It fits into this period where EHX was revisiting its own history, reissuing classic muffs like the Triangle and the op-amp versions.
Right, the reissue series.
Yeah. And maybe looking back like that made them realize, hey, there's this whole other huge category of distortion sound out there that we don't really compete in directly.
The mid-focus tight distortion sound. The RAT sound.
Exactly that. The big muff sound is massive, often scooped in the mids, sounds amazing on its own, but sometimes gets lost in a busy band mix. The RAT sound is famous for cutting through because of that mid-push.
So the Flatiron Fuzz was basically EHX saying, okay, we need a direct competitor in that space.
Precisely. It filled a really noticeable, long-standing gap in their lineup. They finally had an answer to the RAT, built under their own brand.
It also shows a certain confidence, maybe, to openly pay tribute to a competitor circuit like that.
I think so. It shows respect for the history of effects, even beyond their own innovations, while still putting their own stamp on it. The nano enclosure, the branding, the price point.
Ah, yes, the price point and the size. That must have been key to it.
Definitely. The sources emphasize that it was released at a very accessible price. This wasn't just a boutique tribute. It was aimed squarely at working musicians who wanted that RAT sound.
But maybe preferred the smaller EHX format, or found it more affordable, or just trusted the EHX brand.
All of the above, probably. The nano size and the price made it an immediate practical choice for a lot of players. It clearly hit a nerve in the market.
So, if we were to boil down its historical significance, based on our sources, What are the main takeaways? You mentioned 4 key points.
Right. First, it was fundamentally EHX's first direct RAT-inspired pedal. Filled a huge gap that had been there for decades.
Okay, number 1, filled the gap.
Second, it significantly diversified their distortion and fuzz offerings. It proved they weren't just the big muff company anymore. They could nail other classic sounds, too.
Right, broaden the catalog. What's third?
Third, it really demonstrated EHX acknowledging the importance of other classic circuits, applying their own successful formula, good sound, small box, fair price, to a rival's design. It showed they were listening to the broader market.
Acknowledging the classics. And the 4th point?
Commercial success. Plain and simple. It became one of their best-selling nano pedals, period. It validated the whole strategy. People wanted an EHX-flavored RAT.
And it's still going strong today, right? Still in production.
Yep, still in production, still widely seen as one of the best, most affordable ways to get that core RAT sound, especially if you like the EHX nano format. Its legacy seems pretty secure.
So to quickly synthesize all that, the Flatiron Fuzz was EHX smartly taking the core architecture of a rival's legendary pedal, the RAT, tweaking it slightly, packaging it in their popular nano format at a good price, and successfully adding that essential mid-focused distortion fuzz voice to their own lineup.
That sums it up perfectly. A successful strategic move that merged a classic circuit with their own brand identity and market strengths. It really completed their distortion offerings in a key way.
It really makes you think, though. EHX, the company practically synonymous with fuzz, specifically that big, scooped muff sound, finds huge success by releasing a tribute to a distortion circuit known for its mid-range focus. What does that tell you, the listener, about how blurry the lines between fuzz and distortion have become?
Yeah, are those terms even clearly defined anymore in the market's mind?
And maybe how much these legacy brands, even giants like EHX, now rely on, well, honoring the competition's history to round out their own offerings. It's a shift from purely internal innovation to acknowledging the whole landscape.
That's a really interesting point about how brands evolve and respond to the market and history.
Definitely something to chew on. And given how well the Flatiron Fuzz did, it makes you wonder, what other legendary non-EHX circuit deserves the EHX tribute treatment next? Maybe a tube screamer type, a classic Boss circuit, something for you to ponder next time you're setting up your board.
We hope this deep dive gave you some useful context on this really significant pedal.
Until next time, keep digging.